Hello and welcome to the Tifo Football podcast. I'm Reuben Pinder because Joe Devine is on holiday. Where? Let's discuss. Today I'm delighted to be joined by Kaynak.
Hello.
And John Mackenzie.
Hello.
And producer James.
Hello. Yeah, no Joe Devine.
Where is he, John?
That means we can do whatever we like. Right?
Yeah.
And no Steve as well.
And we did. And we did meander quite a lot back to the same points that we did before. But I think it was a good show. What did we talk about on today's show? Super Bayern Munich, Michael Olise Ballon d'Or, get behind the campaign. Meek Madrid, although they were quite threatening. Very Real Madrid, weren't they? They were a little bit all over the place, but also very dangerous in attack. Then we brought that back to Xabi Alonso and whether he could sort out the absolute mess that is Liverpool. Again, if you're listening to this on Thursday morning and they've beaten PSG, then... we sound stupid, but they didn't, did they? They lost 3-0. I hope. And then John came in with a Jondo, a rondo from John to do with Premier League managers. That was good fun. I was not very good at it. We played a separation game as well, because why not? Kaya came in with a very Arsenal-themed separation game.
Well, of sorts.
Of sorts.
Yeah.
You made sure to preface it with as much Arsenal despite the player not actually ever representing Arsenal.
Well,
being
not
a legend,
true.
arguably.
That's not true.
Their rivals, yeah.
A legend of the... Yeah, well, I won't give it away.
And then we spoke more about Arsenal.
did.
Because they beat Sporting Clube de Portugal, having lost to Southampton in the cup. So no, not even a treble. Pathetic.
No, I've always thought 2 is better than 3, just as a number. Third the worst, second the best, as they say.
Bakary Sagna wore number 3 at right back, and he should have worn number 2.
Yeah, I always thought that was strange. I think it was to do with the fact that Abu Diaby was wearing 2 at
Shouldn't
the time.
be wearing 2 in midfield.
I also agree. No, I can't call out any of that. It was, you said there was such force, such vehemence.
I do care about squad numbers.
Yeah,
quite
rightly
deeply.
so.
It's a squad materialist when it comes to squad numbers, aren't you? No shifting whatsoever for you.
My pedantry manifests in many different ways, all of them pointless. Squad numbers being one of them.
Hyphens being the other.
Hyphens in subtitles for videos presented by John is the other one. Yeah. Is it low block? 2 words or 1? Quickly, we have to publish in 5 minutes. Doesn't matter. 2. And then we speak about Manchester City looking ominous. I wrote in my notes earlier, and apologies to the Football Clichés podcast for stepping on their toes here. You only ever use the word ominous for a team in second place. Can anyone else be ominous?
You could guess how you could be ominously looking at the relegation zone.
I think Leeds have been quite ominous.
Yeah. Spurs, I guess, more so.
Lurking ominously.
Yeah,
could
true.
work.
But you've got to be 17th or
you can't. Yeah,
second.
you can't be ominously 10th. I don't think. Yeah.
Where are you looking?
I mean,
looking at the conference.
Everton are
area.
ominously in the top half.
In the context of your life,
yeah.
Everton are ominous.
Yeah, they are. They are leering over me as always.
But nobody else.
No one else
can.
can.
No one else leering. No one else leering over John.
No.
And that's the show. But it was a lot of fun, and we wrapped up a lot earlier than we normally do.
Yeah.
Because we're more efficient without Joe, aren't we?
Yeah.
Where is he on holiday? I meant to ask.
Yeah, he's in Vienna.
That is the most Joe Devine place to go on holiday. What's in Vienna? What's the appeal?
Are there any
I do know
castles
this.
in Vienna?
No, I
Let me
do
have a
know
look.
this, and I've completely forgotten it. There's some reason why he went there.
Classical music?
I don't think so, but I'm sure he will partake while he's there.
Isn't there a big music?
Yeah, there's an opera house maybe
Something
in
like
Vienna.
that, yeah.
Schönbrunn Palace.
Yeah, you absolutely nailed it.
Thank you.
Schönbrunn.
Yes. No, I don't think it does count as a castle. I don't know.
Well,
Schönbrunn Palace was the main summer residence of the Habsburg rulers, located in Heitzing during the 13th district of Vienna.
What are the Habsburgs? You did history. Which
Yes,
ones are those?
I didn't do that bit.
you can't do all of history.
Yeah, this is the
to
thing.
be
People
fair.
always say to me, anything that happened in the past, oh, you did a history degree, you should know what that was. I don't think that's how that works.
Which part of history would you say you know then? Which is your best part?
I would say probably 20th century Cold War specific. Yeah.
I mean, that's nearly just people's memories, isn't it?
It's not mine.
not.
Yeah.
My parents remember that. You can't study things my parents know and call it history. I don't think that.
I
doesn't
think
count.
So the Falklands and the
that's not
poll
history,
tax, that's not
yeah.
history. That's just the
that's
past.
current events.
when I was doing my A levels at history, there was an option for a course which included New Labour at the end of it.
Wow.
I remember thinking that's 97, that feels too recent.
97 onwards.
I was doing my A-levels in 2013, and I guess New Labour, Blair.
He was elected in 97,
Yeah, so it would have come to an end officially 2010, right? Is that sort of...
3 years ago is not history.
It wouldn't have been called New Labour immediately, would it? Or was it being called New Labour?
In the course it was, I don't know.
I think they called it that at the time. I mean, again, I was one when...
It's like when was World War II called World War II and World War One called... Well, because World War One was
the
obviously
Great
not...
War.
Yeah, because you don't go in being like, this is the first of many, lads.
Like with films, you don't call it Toy Story 1 when it's just the first Toy Story, do you? It's just Toy Story. So that one was just called War.
Yeah, I think Labour was just called Labour until they decided it was new.
Labour 1.
The Via Media, the third way.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, you can find out all about Joe's holiday in Vienna when he's back next week. I should use this opportunity to say join the Discord. There's a link in the description. You can talk to us, but don't tag us too often because John's a very busy man. He's writing a book, and his PR campaign for the book seems to be to just very subtly shoehorn it into not shoehorn. That sounds cruel. Just casually drop into broader points that he's making about something else in the hope that it's not exactly the media term splash, is it?
No, I'm doing the opposite thing. You know, the thing when people
drip, yeah.
I'm slowly breaking people down so that they'll end up in a Waterstones in 5 months' time and see a copy and be like, I don't know anything about this book, but I've got a feeling I need to buy it.
Just drinking a warm bottle of Peroni. Oh, do you work with John? Do you? Oh, no. And the live show. I don't know if it's sold out yet. I don't have access to this information. Do you know if it's sold out yet?
I think it was very close to being sold out.
Okay.
So,
well, if there's any tickets left, Leicester Square Theatre, September the 8th? 8th.
Or 18th. One of the two. Why is there a dog in
What is that?
Producer James is sneezing.
Was that a sneeze?
Sorry, that was a sneeze.
Oh, wow. That sounded
fever.
like a dog to me.
My crippling hay fever.
It is September the 8th, so get down to Leicester Square Theatre, not in Leicester. In Leicester Square.
Not in Walthamstow.
Not in Walthamstow or Soho. Near to Soho.
Is in a theatre, though.
It is a theatre.
Yeah.
It's a lovely room. We performed there before. Anyway, enjoy the show. Well, where else to begin, of course, but with Real Madrid 1, Bayern Munich 2, a Michael Elise masterclass. The Germans' first win over Real Madrid for 14 years, and their first in this arena over 90 minutes for a quarter of a century. John, you've been singing Bayern's praises all season. Was this one of their better performances? Were you impressed?
I think the first half was a good performance, but the first half was very much like going back in time and watching, a Pep team against, I don't know, Mourinho in 2012 or something like that, where I think Madrid obviously came out not wanting to overcommit too much at first, and it just allowed Bayern to possess the ball around the opposition box, move it around a little bit. They're not necessarily the greatest team at breaking down low blocks. And one of the things we've seen from them has been, I think this season in particular, and something I talked about on Tuesday in my Did You Notice from Tuesday, the way that teams now aren't trying to break down low blocks in quite the same way, where they have, I guess, small space players who can just sort of pick these blocks apart. What they're starting to do now is decompress these blocks, try and pull them apart by resetting the play, playing back even to their goalkeeper and opening them out. But the first half felt pretty comfortable for Bayern in that respect. And then they came out second half, scored a goal pretty early on, and then it felt to me like they did the opposite of what you should do in that situation, and they sort of allowed the game to get a little bit more open, which suited Real Madrid. I think that's a combination of a few things. One, that they were 2-0 up, but and the way that they tend to defend with man orientation. They're quite versatile in the first half, but they simply allowed the game to just open out a little bit more than you would hope with Vinicius Junior and Mbappe in that team, and they were able to get into it a little bit more. There were some subs as well, which I think helped. So Bellingham came on, that helped. Brahim came on. They were a little bit more intense out of possession, which helped them turn the ball over a little bit more, made Bayern a little bit less comfortable on the ball. And then Eder Militao, I thought, was decent in terms of ball progression from deep as well. And that just allowed them to get into the game a little bit more. And in the first half, they were attacking mainly through just sort of chunking it into the channel and hoping Vinicius did something.
Yeah.
But in the second half, it just felt a little bit more like they did a bit more ball carrying. Jude Bellingham carrying the ball through the middle as well caused problems, and they just sort of did the things that actually you can cause Bayern some problems with if you do them. Given that they have the man marking, you can actually cause a lot of havoc if you play at speed and carry the ball a lot. And yeah, I mean that game could have been 5-5 by the end of it.
Yeah,
it was,
they had the XG I think was 2 in Real Madrid, 2 to Real Madrid and 3 to Bayern Munich. So, it was and they had 20 shots each, some of which came from star of the show, Michael Olise. As Seb Stafford-Bloor, your friend of mine, writes on The Athletic, Olise produced arguably the best Champions League performance of his Bayern career. The former Crystal Palace forward was stylish and destructive and hurt Madrid almost every time he touched the ball. This was a real joy for me to watch, the way he kind of glided through Real Madrid's defence. Say some nice things about Michael Olise, Kaya.
With pleasure. I'm just going to pick you up. Is glided the correct term?
Rather than glid.
Or glowed.
It's one of those past tense verbs that sounds wrong.
Yeah.
Like dove is incorrect. It's dived.
Yes.
But it should really be dove.
Right.
I believe glided is correct, but willing to be corrected on that matter.
I'm going to go with glowed. I think I prefer it more. I like the way he glowed through the defence. I like also the way that you've managed to chain this Champions League heavyweight clash into Crystal Palace propaganda.
There's always an angle.
There is. And I'm happy for it because I think Seb is obviously knows his stuff when it comes to German football, and he's right here because Olise is probably one of the best players in Europe right now. I think you read off some stats that he's on for the record number of assists in a season.
I think for club and country across an entire season in all comps, he's on course to beat Messi's record, which is quite something. And of course, Harry Kane scored his 49th goal, so maybe they could share the Ballon d'Or.
Yeah, maybe. That seems fair. I suppose you can melt down gold, can't you? So that would work.
I mean, you can.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could work. I think they obviously combined really well together, and you add Luis Diaz into that, and the kind of goals that Bayern Munich have been scoring, that first Luis Diaz goal, although it didn't sort of involve Olise, the assist of the build-up was kind of him. I would say that's typical of what Bayern have been doing this season, and then the second goal, Olise shows his quality in terms of seizing on a mistake that Real Madrid make 22 seconds into the second half, and suddenly the game is massively in Bayern's favour, and that level of attacking quality is probably why Bayern Munich are the favourites, in my opinion, for the Champions League this season. I would say that they look the most dangerous team going forward. They probably look the most complete team, I would say. And yeah, that level of attacking talent is a huge, huge reason why. So, yeah.
And it's not only Bayern's attackers. I agree. Luis Diaz has been a fantastic sign. He's got that kind of balance combined with raw physicality that means he's so effective in the final third. But also at the back, 40-year-old Manuel Neuer did really keep them in the game with some incredible saves. It astonishes me every time I watch him play and he pulls these saves off because of the fact that maybe I think 4 years ago he broke his femur when skiing mid-season when after Germany got knocked out of the World Cup. Or I think I've got that right. So to come back from that and still be as agile and strong as he is incredible. But because as John mentioned, Real Madrid did pose some serious counter-attacking threat in the second half.
Yeah, Neuer is incredible. I mean, I watched a clip of, and I can bring England up on the pod because Joe isn't here and the reign of Reuben allows it. And there was a clip of the 2010 World Cup where Germany beat England. And I think the second goal is Miroslav Klose, and just some terrible defending from England at the back. I think it's Matthew Upson. And the guy taking the goal kick is Manuel Neuer in 2010.
Yeah.
So, and he's still at the top of the game
This
now.
is not the England chat that I endorse.
Listen.
Without Germany team had a few graduates from their under-21 winners, I think, because it was the first one that Ozil and Khedira played as well.
Yeah. And Neuer is still doing it at the top level. I think he's had some moments this season, and Seb wrote a piece this morning about the doubts that are up against him, in the sense that people are saying, is it time for Bayern to move on? Is it time for them to look to the future? And he sort of pulls these performances out of the bag that are maybe, I think Seb described them as ageless, and they sort of they remind you of the quality that he's got. I think he had some shaky moments earlier in the season. I know in the Arsenal game earlier in the league phase, he wasn't maybe at his best then, but I think there's something about the high pressure situations that bring out the best in the best players. And I would say, Neuer showed that again last night.
Yeah, this is one of the best goalkeeping performances I've seen for a long while. And I don't know, in many respects, it almost felt like like an old game in that respect. And I was thinking this the other day, in the last round of the Champions League, we had like quite a lot of big scores. And it got me thinking about the conversation that inevitably comes up about the Premier League being dour and too defensive, etc. But I think those sorts of results really indicate why it is that the Premier League has become so defensive, because amongst the elite teams, if you are playing in a league system where you can get battered like that, I think the teams are just much more likely to try and prevent that from happening. Whereas in the Champions League, teams go for it a little bit more, and the games are a bit more open. And something like a goalkeeping performance like Neuer's yesterday can keep you in the game. There's one save from Mbappe in was it
Mbappe running on the right side?
Yeah. And he played it back across himself, and I don't think it was like necessarily like super impressive that Neuer got to it, but the fact that he got such a strong hand to it and like palmed it away was pretty impressive. And there was plenty of other saves.
Well, even the way the Vinicius Junior one is obviously looked at as a miss by Vinny Junior, but the way Neuer stays on his feet and doesn't overcommit early, that's really smart goalkeeping in terms of like 1v1.
And he did a couple of classic Neuer come out of your goal miles in a sort of counter-attack situation, which could have gone very wrong. I think there was the one where Jonathan Tah sort of tried to play it back to him, and he was only about a foot behind him, and it bounced off him kind of luckily. And that's the reason why I think people can be quite critical of Neuer when it goes wrong, because those situations just look so bad when they don't come off. But they came off yesterday, and very much kept Bayern in the game. But I did think it was weird that Bayern let Real Madrid back into the game at 2-0. At that point, it just sort of felt like, oh, this is it now. Similar to what we saw in the Carabao Cup. Sorry to bring that one up.
Thanks, man.
But when a team like that goes ahead, they have the ability to control the game well enough then to just take the sting out of it and sort of cruise to the end. And I just assumed that would happen, but instead it just felt like everything sort of spread out, opened up, and there's a timeline not far away from the one that actually happened where Real Madrid score 3 goals in that second half.
Yeah. Well, this is why I love the Champions League knockout stage. Like you were saying a minute ago about the difference between like league format and this. In the league games that you see between teams of comparable quality in the Premier League are very cagey. And like knockout games are cagey as well. But if you go 2-0 down in the Champions League, you just have to attack and try and score some goals. And I thought Trent Alexander-Arnold, unsurprisingly, shone more in attack than he did in defence. But I was really impressed, given the recent barrage that I came under on this podcast for not saying he should definitely 100% be in the England squad and Thomas Tuchel's an idiot. But I think you saw both sides of Trent. It was a real encapsulation of his pros and cons, strengths and weaknesses.
What I think was most interesting, though, is that he didn't look like the most incompetent fullback for Real Madrid when it came to
Carreras did not have a good game.
I mean, Carreras got absolutely taken apart by Elise. But I mean, I feel like we passed over Elise quite quickly, despite the fact that you went in hot and went with him early on. But like, what a remarkable performance by him, and just a mature performance. I think he's right up there now. I think with your Lamine Yamal's, which I guess maybe even a year ago we wouldn't even have necessarily thought that would be the case. But he is right up there.
Output wise, they're more or less on a par this season, where Lamine Yamal has more goals and Elise has more assists. So he's definitely in that conversation. Obviously a bit older, which makes people talk about Lamine Yamal maybe a bit more. But one of the many great entertaining attackers that have supposedly gone extinct in the modern game.
Yeah, exactly. But I thought just a very mature performance from him as well, in terms of an understanding of when to go, when to stay, when to go outside, when to go inside, and the ability to just do that against any opponent. And when he gets up to speed when he comes out of the wide area at speed, he can then just run past a couple of players in a row, and it just looks terrifying. So excited to see how the rest of his Champions League pans out. And
he always wears boots to match his kit,
right?
Which makes it a more enjoyable experience aesthetically.
So did he have one red boot and one blue boot at Palace, or
no? But there was presumably he wore blue boots for the blue socks. But we had an away kit that was like an homage to a kit 100 and something years ago.
Okay.
That was like Blackburn. It was like halves, light blue and white.
Sure.
And he had these same Nike boots on that had that were halved blue and white. And it looked fantastic. So well done to Michael Elise. Now, obviously, we're speaking about this game because we are recording on a Wednesday and that game happened on a Tuesday. So we can't actually speak about PSG 3, Liverpool 0, presuming that's what happens tonight. But Liverpool, Madrid, Alonso, I'm trying to pull all of these things together quite badly here. But another point about Real Madrid, this is obviously Alvaro Arbeloa is in charge now. He actually they lost at the weekend to Mallorca. So that's 2 defeats in a row. He's had a very mixed bag of results since he took over from Alonso. Is it too easy to say that Madrid gave up on the Alonso project too early?
Yeah, I mean, I did see a rolling XG plot, you know, the type that we often put out on the Athletic for Real Madrid that went back all the way through, Ancelotti's last tenure at the club. And it was very interesting to see that. I mean, and this was a phenomenon we talked about at the time, that the underlying numbers looked quite good for Xabi Alonso in terms of, you know, he bumped up the XG, so they were producing chances and chance quality above what they had been before, and he reduced the XG against quite considerably as well. Since Arbeloa has come in, the numbers have headed in the wrong direction on both counts, and there's an extent to which, you know, the underlying numbers are peripheral when it comes to a club like Real Madrid, because a lot of it is down to management of the players. You use the word egos, but I guess it's this concept of how do you get so many good players into the same team and not end up with negative results. And there was to an extent yesterday, you could almost see that with this, you know, playing Vinicius and Mbappe in that front line, and you know, there's been I've seen comments on social media this morning about how little work they do out of possession. I think Mbappe does do the work, but I think Vinicius Junior doesn't do a huge amount, and that was a big gamble with Alonso, right? It was like, can we maybe impose a balance where, you know, you're getting the talent to do the hard work as well as the things that they're good at, and I guess that's been the sort of the perennial conversation. Should that be the case? Are a team like Real Madrid better off if they just allow their players to do the things they're best at and try and sort of muddle through sometimes in the out of possession phases? And I think there are arguments to both ways, but I do think it's interesting that, especially in a post-Modric, in a post-Kroos world, that I just don't think that Real Madrid get quite the amount of benefit that they used to in those situations. So it does just become, can Mbappe, can Vinicius perform in those moments where they are able to get in behind or get into attack space? Yeah, and often, you know, they did create a lot of chances, and as we said, you know, there is a world where they could have come out winners in the end after the second half. But I think the conversation has to become about, you know, giving yourself, it becomes a percentage game. I think if you give yourself the opportunity of trying to get that aspect of both of those players with maybe a little bit more control out of possession, maybe a little bit more control with the ball as well, I do think that there probably is a way of being able to get some kind of a best of both worlds where you're able to harness some of the real obvious abilities that those two have, with maybe a game plan which isn't just sort of hope that the opponent don't score and then hope that we take our chances when they come up, right? Which is, on the one hand, given they have great players, you can make the argument that the odds are in their favour when it comes to that. But I think that the modern game has just got to a point where, you know, opponents are just so smart in every phase of play that you're reducing the odds of that happening over and over and over.
For YouTube viewers, if we looked distracted during John's answer there, it wasn't because we zoned out. It was because there's some very notable drilling somewhere in the vicinity. But it's okay, producer James, isn't it?
It's fine. We'll cut that.
Okay. Well, there might be another opportunity for Xabi Alonso to take the reins at a former club of his, as people have spoken about a lot over the last few weeks. Liverpool fans chanting his name again as they exited the Etihad Stadium at the weekend after a 4-0 shellacking by Manchester City. Would he be able to, do you think, impose his ideas more easily at Liverpool to a greater level of success, or at least lift them back up? Or would he encounter similar issues that he had at Real Madrid?
I feel like Liverpool would be a club where it seems like they'd be a bit more open to that kind of thing. So obviously Real Madrid have a recent history of changing managers semi-regularly. Well, not semi-regularly, very regularly. And I think once you've got that pressure going into it and the players having pretty much all the power, obviously Florentino Perez having a lot of power as well, coming into that is very difficult for a manager who, like John said, Alonso wants to impose a very specific set of demands onto a team. And that's quite hard to do if you've got players who are used to being able to, I don't know, like Vinicius Junior was saying, used to being able to get away with a bit less defensive work. I don't think there's that level of egos at Liverpool. I know people will point to Mo Salah, but he's obviously leaving. And they'll be bringing players in to replace him. I think it's a good balance for him to go in now where I think Liverpool also have a culture where the fans are generally on side with the manager. They tend to back the manager. I know this season has kind of gone against that because fans have turned on Arne Slot and relatively quickly, given that he only won the league last season. But I think Xabi Alonso, given his history at the club, given that he's someone who the fans admire and someone who they've been kind of wanting for a while now, I think that could work quite nicely. I think it'd be a good fit. I just feel like it feels really harsh on Arne Slot. And I know things have been bad this season, but it feels harsh on him in the sense that the window was kind of bad. And we've spoken about this on previous episodes of the pod where the summer didn't really do him any favours and now he's kind of dealing with the fallout of it. But I guess the egos, if you like, at Liverpool aren't the same as the Real Madrid ones in the sense that people will maybe talk about the Dominic Szoboszlai scenes at the end of the City game where he was sort of giving a bit to the fans. I think...
What was his point there? That they shouldn't have left early?
I think the point was more like, stop having a go at us, we're giving our best. It's kind of the vibe I got from it.
Contradicted by Van Dijk saying they all gave up.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Subconsciously, almost.
Do you think that fan attitudes have changed towards players? Do you think fans have just become like super short-termist when it comes to like how long we should? Because I don't know, it just feels to me now.
I mean, to do the Palace angle again, Glasnow's not very popular at Palace because of the way he's conducted himself in the media, complained about lack of investment, etc., and quite a sustained run of bad results, despite the fact that he won the FA Cup last season. It's a very similar, smaller scale version of what's happened at Liverpool, right?
It's the acceleration of everything, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's like you don't expect players to stay at clubs as long as they used to. You don't expect managers to stay at clubs as long as they used to. The fans of the top sides expect them to win something every year, and there's only a finite number of trophies, as Arsenal are finding out. But yeah, and I don't know. I don't know whether or not because again, bringing it back to the Alonso at Real Madrid thing. He lasted half season. The underlying numbers were decent. I know there was issues with
friction with Vinicius.
Yeah, exactly. And you know that you can't just point at the numbers and say it's working. But to a certain extent on the pitch, it was kind of working. And it was funny that they almost sort of got to a point where it felt as though the players were
this
frustrated.
is working too well.
Exactly. So they felt as though they were imminently going to lose a lot of the power in the dressing room that they have. But I don't know. A part of me just kind of thinks, have we left that period of football where you'd be like, okay, we've just had a bad season. We won the league last season in the case of Liverpool. Let's just allow this guy to try again next season and see where we go. But
it used to just be Chelsea that did this. You know, do you remember? Ancelotti won a double in his first season at Chelsea, and then nothing the year afterwards?
I think so.
And then got sacked.
Yeah.
Crazy.
It was quite common for Chelsea, but I'd say that there are examples of teams who are doing it still today. I suppose Arsenal was probably the prime example where things weren't very good at the start. I think Man United tried to do it with Reuben Amorim until he kind of talked himself out of it a little bit. And I think the Slot one is more... I don't think it's necessarily the fact that it's a bad season in terms of results. I don't actually think Liverpool fans will be that concerned by the results. It's more the performances and the way they've gone about being so poor this season, I'd say.
Well, you mentioned Arsenal. We'll get on to them after a short advertisement break. And we're back from the break. It's the rondo. But John is leading it.
Yeah, and the rondo, for those people who haven't watched this podcast ever, is basically a quiz where there's multiple answers, potential answers, and we go through them until someone gets a wrong answer or they take too long to answer. So there's 20 here. This is a year out of date. So
20 managers,
20,
the longest serving in the Premier League 10 months ago.
Yeah, we need to go through it in order, though, don't we? That's the
you
problem.
have to go like 1, 2, 3.
I think we should go in order. Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just naming Premier League managers,
it's just naming the Premier League
That's a
managers.
good point.
Right? So who wants to go with the longest? Who wants to start?
I'll let you have it, given that I'm the reigning champion.
Is it Mikel Arteta?
Have I regraded the crown already?
Is it not Mikel Arteta?
It's Pep Guardiola, surely.
Oh,
We'll let Kaya go first.
Is it Pep Guardiola?
It's Pep Guardiola, yeah. Ruben?
Of course. Is it Mikel Arteta?
It is Mikel Arteta, yes. Number 3.
Okay.
Okay, now we're playing. Now we're cooking with gas.
I think you would already be a bit surprised at this, potentially.
Marco Silva at Fulham?
Is the correct answer.
Yeah.
Very good.
Number 4.
He's only been there 3 years. Well, I suppose 3 years and 10 months.
Number 4.
Well, 4 years
4 years now.
and 9 months now. So
Can I
it's
look
quite
at
a while.
Can I look at the Premier League table just to remind me who's in it?
This feels unfair.
Unai Emery.
Ooh.
Incorrect.
Unai Emery is number 5 with 2 years, 7 months, and then 10 months extra.
Okay.
To guess number 4.
Yeah.
This is hard.
Well, maybe I should hurry you up. Kaya.
No, don't do that.
We do know that Joe is very soft on you when it comes to timing.
He's going to retain his crown
5,
Yeah, I've won the crown already.
4, 3, 2, 1.
It's not Andoni Iraola.
It's not. But do you want to guess how high up Andoni Iraola is?
7.
He is 7, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Well, wait. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
6, okay.
And 4th was Eddie Howe.
Eddie Howe.
Oh,
Yeah.
very good.
But don't you think that's crazy? Like, it's Andoni Iraola and then Daniel Farke, like, as the longest
How long has he
serving.
been at Leeds now?
Well, 2 years and 10 months. 2 years and 9 months.
The average lifespan of a manager is about a year and a half now, right?
Yeah. And what's crazy about Farke is that I guess he's like a promoted coach as well. So you'd expect them to
Same
be
with
like,
Silva, yeah.
Yeah. You'd expect them to be pretty quick. But then, I mean, Glasner, it's then Nuno at Forest. He's obviously not there anymore. But then Glasner was 1 year, 3 months at the time, and he's in the top half. It's just
Right,
crazy
still there,
how
so-
Yeah.
it's crazy how quickly they turn. Anyway,
Well, you mentioned Arsenal. We will get to them after the break. But during that break, we're going to play the separation game. So, Kaya, please tell me and John which player we need to find
Yes.
a route between with the links. Everyone knows the rules of the separation game. It's the number of players between player A and player B. That's the game.
Yes, and we were talking earlier about Harry Kane and his incredible goal-scoring record this season and in many seasons gone by, but many of us will know that Harry Kane is an Arsenal fan who briefly played in the Arsenal Academy before he was cruelly stolen away from his rightful home. But can you connect him with another former great Arsenal striker, Ian Wright?
Harry Kane to Ian Wright. That's the game. Can we find teammates to link them? Enjoy the adverts. And we're back from the break. Kaya, Quizmaster, take it away.
Yes, so we had to find between Harry Kane and Ian Wright. John, let's go with you first. You said you took a weird route. So what is this weird
How
route?
many? How many?
Oh yeah, how many? Sorry.
3.
3. Ruben?
2.
2. Okay, so John goes
Yeah,
first.
there's definitely a more efficient way of doing it than the one
Do
I
the
did.
fun one first.
I started with Ian Wright.
Makes
Ian-
sense.
Yeah, he was at Burnley in the 99-2000 season for his last season in professional football, where he played with a guy called Alan Lee.
Yes.
Palace legend.
You'll remember, of
Yeah.
course, you'll remember him because he's a Palace legend because he played at Palace. And he played at Palace with Jose Font.
Yes.
Oh.
Jose Font played at Southampton with Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, who played at Spurs with Harry Kane.
That is
Very
fun.
good.
John
Very
found the
fun.
Palace angle that I couldn't find.
Yeah.
As soon as I found my first connection, I was like, I can't deviate away from this for a more fun one. I have to go. Harry Kane played at Tottenham with Emmanuel Adebayor,
He did.
who played at Manchester City with Patrick Vieira,
He did.
who played at Arsenal with Ian Wright.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good. Well done. I also had Adebayor in my route. I took a scenic route
Right,
that involved. So I did Ian Wright, played with Nicholas Anelka, who played with Nicholas Bentner at Juventus.
Nicholas Anelka played with everyone, to be fair.
Very true. Including Nicholas Bentner, who obviously played with Emmanuel Adebayor at Arsenal, who played with Harry Kane at Spurs. But I think your version is much
All
better.
strikers.
All strikers.
Yeah, I love that.
All strikers.
But when Anelka went to Juventus,
Yes.
he played 2 league games on loan.
Oh, God, you're going to do me
Right.
on a technicality.
Yeah, get
My own.
got.
He played 2 league games on loan. When Bentner went to Juventus, the same season, I believe 12-13, bizarre. Oh, he played 9 league games. Okay, so they both went there that season and they did both play, so it does
Nice.
work.
Nice.
Very weird. Why Italian clubs just addicted to mid strikers, aren't they?
Very true.
Well, they played 3-5-2 back then, so you can never have enough. Speaking of Arsenal strikers, Kai Havertz scored this week. in the Champions League against Sporting Clube de Portugal.
Far too many vowels in that pronunciation.
Sporting Clube de Portugal. Kaya, you watched this game, presumably. Yes. You sat through it.
Did you sit through it? You sat the whole time?
I was lying down on the sofa.
Or you lay through it?
I sort of I yelled. Yeah. So my housemates thought that something bad had happened actually because I yelled quite loudly, and then in doing so I dropped my plate on the floor because I was having dinner at the same time when Martin Zubimendi scored, which turned out to be offside. So it wasn't even worth it. Thing, maybe a bad thing did happen. But sorry.
That's your review of the game.
Yeah, maybe a bad thing did happen, and the bad thing was Arsenal's season. No, it wasn't the greatest of games. I did feel a bit like seeing all the score notifications coming through from the Real Bayern game and hearing about how much fun that was.
Yeah.
It's sort of like when you go as a kid to like a friend's house and they're doing really fun stuff on a Friday night, and then you go back to your family and it's not quite as fun. You're just like, oh God.
That's a sad window into Kai's childhood, isn't it?
Okay, sure. I thought that'd be a lot more of a universal experience.
So you went to let's get this clear. You went to your friend's house.
Let's say you go to your friend's house and
they were like, we're going to have fun now. Yeah. So off you go home.
No, I think
more like
do you mean you go and have fun somewhere else and return back to
yeah.
So it's like, oh, we're ordering Domino's tonight.
Yeah.
And you can play Xbox until 12.
Yes.
And then you go home and it's just like, what was your house
Lights
like?
out by 8 p.m. No. That's I thought it'd be a lot more of a universal experience.
It's a bit like when you have a season ticket in the Football League and you have to go and watch your team play Portsmouth on a Tuesday night instead of watching the Champions League at home.
Yeah.
That's what it is like.
Yeah, you do have to do that.
You've never experienced that though, have you?
Well, never say never, given Spurs' accolades this season.
Quite.
But yeah, the game wasn't great. Getting back to that and away from my childhood trauma. I think it was sort of, obviously going into it, there was a lot of doubt hanging over Arsenal because of the loss in the Carabao Cup final, as John helpfully reminded me of earlier. The loss to Southampton that I thought I'd managed to escape from, given there was no Bank Holiday Monday show, but it seems I'm going to be forced to talk about it today.
What was the biggest difference between the Southampton defeat and the winning at Sporting?
So I would say that in the Southampton game, Arsenal looked defensively vulnerable in a way they haven't done all season. Southampton played really direct football, and Arsenal's defenders looked really vulnerable in one-on-one duels, which they haven't done for large parts of this season. I think they probably did miss Declan Rice a bit in that sense in terms of the off-the-ball insurance policy. But this game against Sporting, Arsenal kind of went back to the thing we've been associating with them most of this season, which is solid defensively, not taking too many risks, and kind of grinding out a result. In this instance, they kind of went into it knowing that a 0-0 away at Lisbon, particularly Lisbon side, have won 17 home games in a row before this game. So it wouldn't have been the worst result in the world. I guess it's not a performance that puts like the doubts to bed, if you like, but I'd probably say the big light is off and the dimmer switch has been turned down in that sense. So I think the sleep hygiene was strong on this performance. I think Arsenal they did what they needed to do. There's still the fear, obviously, when it comes to Arsenal, and I think this is a running theme that's been going throughout the season. I've spoken to a few people in the office today. I spoke to actually Art de Roche, and we said, I think he mentioned on Handbrake Off that he thinks he kind of compared it the way Arsenal played and the pace to walking football, in the sense it was very slow last night. There wasn't much zip about it, which is, again, I think Mikel Arteta would argue is fine because Arsenal didn't need to chase the game. They weren't in a hurry. Like you mentioned before, the Champions League is great when teams are at a deficit, but when it's 0-0, it can be quite cagey, particularly in first legs. And I think that led Arsenal to be sort of maybe playing a more cautious approach, which worked for them on the night. But I think across the season, certainly since the turn of the year, it's hard to remember too many games where Arsenal have been fluent attacking force. I was thinking maybe Leeds away, Spurs away, Leverkusen at home, they're pretty good as well. But beyond that, there's not been too many sort of easy on the eye attacking performances for Arsenal. And that's a concern going for the rest of the season, because it does just mean these games are going to feel like a bit of a grind. And again, people will quite rightly say that the results are working. And don't get me wrong, like if Arsenal win the Champions League and the Premier League, I'll be there tops off at Islington Town Hall with everyone, like with the best of them. But I think that is a fear that Arsenal fans have. And these games are so close and so tense and so defined by margins. And a piece of individual brilliance from Gabriel Martinelli to create the goal for Kai Havertz, yes, but also Arsenal were reliant on David Raya making a few good saves. And you don't quite get that sense of security that you had maybe earlier in the season with Arsenal. So it does feel difficult right now, and I don't think they're at their best. And it's a tough time of the season to be coming into when you're not at your best, because Bournemouth is obviously coming up this weekend for Arsenal. That's going to be a difficult game, kind of the exact game you don't want to be playing in between two Champions League legs, in the sense that Bournemouth are going to make you run a lot. It's going to be transitional. They're a threat on the break. You can't really rotate too many players. And then obviously City straight after that, which is a massive game and potentially title deciding. So that's going to be a really difficult period for Arsenal. I kind of feel weird being negative about them. They've come away with what was a really good European away result and kind of a classic European performance.
Yeah.
But the flaws that have become apparent about Arsenal, not just in these past two defeats to Southampton and City, but probably maybe even since the turn of the year, still don't feel like they've been answered. And yeah, it's a little bit of a concern, but maybe one that you can dismiss while the results keep coming in.
Obviously, we love a counterfactual on the Tifo Football podcast. How do you think the narrative would be different this afternoon, if the result had stayed at 0-0?
I think Arsenal would having to deal with.
They're running out of steam.
Yeah, probably a bit of that, but I think there'd be a bit of, are Arsenal wobbling? I think Arsenal fans would have been going hard on the defensive in the sense of saying that 0-0 is actually a decent result in a first leg in Champions League away from home. Obviously, they're strong favourites, but they went to Leverkusen in the last round and got a draw and brought them back to the Emirates and won quite comfortably. And I think most people would be assuming that's the same thing that will happen this time around from an Arsenal perspective. But I think if you're looking at it outside and you see for the first time all season Arsenal haven't won 3 games in a row, you start to think maybe there's a bit of a wobble going on. So the late goal does make a huge difference, and I think it's important for Arsenal as well. I think Theo Walcott said on the post-match on Amazon sort of to remind themselves that they do know how to win these kind of games again. So that's important, but I'd just say that the kind of the brittleness it does feel like there's been in this Arsenal team, kind of brittleness is probably the wrong word, because I don't know.
It's their ability to be bitten by variance, I think, right? And we've talked about this a lot before, that when you, despite the fact that I think, from a tactical point of view, it's not the worst approach to try and reduce the amount of goals in games and be well prepared to deal in control. But the problem is if all it takes is for a team to score a goal and then suddenly the plan shakes a little bit, right? And I think that's what we've seen a lot from Arsenal this season, is that, and even when they're getting into these winning game states, they're still not opening up, and so the games are just becoming stressful for the players, the fans, for everyone, and it feels like there's no easy games, right? When everything is like we're winning a game by a single goal margin.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's hard to think of many games this calendar year, I would say, where Arsenal have kind of felt comfortable going into the last 15 minutes. I kind of reeled them off, the ones that I can think of on the top of my head, and it's not many beyond that. It does feel like there's a lot of tense games, and I do wonder if that kind of plays into the emotional fatigue and maybe even the physical fatigue. I mean, obviously there's all the talk that Arsenal are pulling out players and pretending they're injured, but it turns out they actually are.
You can sub them as well, right? When you get, and that's something you notice from City games, right? As soon as they went 3 or 4 up against Liverpool at the weekend, Rodri was straight off, for example, and they can bring they've got their depth obviously, but it just takes the pressure off the players, right? If they're just doing 60 minutes a week, 65 minutes a week when they need to, it really refreshes them in a way that like Arsenal players just won't be able to enjoy the same.
No, and you don't expect against Bournemouth, for example, this weekend, you don't expect that they'll be in a position going into the last half an hour of the game where they'll be able to make a change like that. And that's the kind of thing that I think even in previous title races that has kind of come back to bite Arsenal. I know was it 22-23 or 23-24 when they pushed City all the way to the final day? I think it's 23-24.
Yeah.
But that season they were able to do it, but they were able to win games quite early on, and they were winning 5-6-0.
You didn't have many injuries at all that season.
That also helped.
Yeah.
Whereas this season they've lost key players in kind of clusters. I think Art DeRoche wrote about that on the Athletic website, where it seems like whenever Arsenal get an injury glut, they all seem to be in the same position, which is,
I guess if they're all at that level, right? Then they're all not far away from potentially going beyond the red zone or whatever.
Yeah, well, which is I think what we've seen with so many players coming back from the international break. I know that was a thing, but a lot of them were genuinely injured or right on the red zone, and those players who did come back, like Saka's not played since, Timber's not played since, Nkapie has not played since, Declan Rice only played for the first time last night. So yeah, I think that is a concern for Arsenal. I'm wary of, like, I'm thinking if I was an Arsenal fan listening to this podcast, would I be thinking it's being a bit negative for a team who are favourites going to the semi-finals of the Champions League, in a really strong position to win the Premier League? Probably it's a bit of a negative viewpoint. It's hard to escape that feeling of like, every game does just feel like a bit of a grind right now. Nothing feels easy. And maybe once the trophies, if the trophies are, maybe if the trophies are finalised and sorted in the bag, then you can start to relax a bit. But I think until then, and the way these tactics are and the way that Arsenal are approaching it, it's going to be super stressful and kind of horrible.
It's the cadence they've had under Arteta as well, right? They've slowed down at the end of season. So they've gone hard at the beginning and slowed down, which I think, it would have worked fine last season. It's exactly what Liverpool did last season. But this season, it seems like City might just turn the screw right at the end of the season. And that's the worrying thing, right?
They do look ominous, don't they? It feels like a lot of momentum will depend on that game in a week and a half's time.
Yeah.
But at the same time, Arsenal seem to do this thing this season where they drop points in a draw, and then they lose a game, and everyone starts to think that they're going to fall apart, and then somebody returns from injury and they win 5 games in a row.
Yeah, I mean, it does feel like people are waiting for Arsenal to fall apart because I think lots of other people would view it to be extremely funny, and I can understand that. But I think that, you would hope that they've got enough left in the tank to get them over the line at this point.
It's a City game, isn't it? Like it's one of those ones where even if they draw that game, that then pretty much gives them the Premier League, right? So it almost becomes like a final in a weird way.
Does feel like it.
Well, Arsenal didn't do great in the actual final. They played against City. No more quadruple. Did you see that tweet from Southampton Football Club to the Arsenal fan that was like, enjoy your quadruple, pal?
It was actually a treble by that point, Southampton. So
jokes on you.
Don't know how I feel about clubs doing that on Twitter. But,
football fandom is quite vulgar, isn't it, in many respects? It's quite cringe. The things that it makes grown men do.
Well, I saw City put out a tweet. I think, I don't know if it was true, it could have been AI sort of, but someone put it on our Discord that City put out a tweet of the Artemis moon landing and they changed the moon to light blue colour. Just like, that's gross. I don't like that.
That wasn't real. That was definitely AI.
Oh, okay.
the
I'm an idiot, so yeah.
Cheese
and
is
made
not
of
blue.
cheese.
Well,
blue cheese,
some
blue cheese is
blue.
a thing.
Some cheese is blue. Well, speaking of things that are blue, let's talk more about Man City, John. You made a video this week about how they are playing differently and use the word decompress earlier in relation to Bayern Munich as well. Explain what that means and relate it to the Arsenal game that they have coming up and the Chelsea game actually this weekend.
Well, I guess it was funny because we were talking about with respect to the Bayern game that it felt like quite a sort of standard City game where they squeeze the opponent back. Their build-up is sort of sustainable and universal through the third, so they pick the ball up, move the opponent deep into the half and then break down the block. And that used to be the way that Guardiola just wanted to do it. And there's quotes out there where he says, if I had my way, every game we played, we would be able to do this. But it's felt as though that kind of meta has shifted a little bit in recent years, largely because I think opponents are now much happier to press high and just try and destabilize that kind of approach. So make it harder to possess the ball in your own third. If you can do that to an opponent, then they're much less likely to be able to control you back into your own box. And as a result, the best way of playing against that is actually, rather than playing slow, which is largely what City want to do under Pep, is to play fast because the space is now open up further up the field. And there's actually an interview with Pep recently where he talked about this, where people, I think he was responding to people saying, "Oh, don't you think it's weird that like Guardiola's teams are going direct more now?" And he was just like, "There's a difference between just getting rid of the ball, going long, and playing very dangerous long passes." Obviously, long passes have become much more dangerous now that teams are pressing players forward. And so essentially what's happened is I think Guardiola in the last season or so has built a team that can play fast as well as slow. I was just talking about how that was happening in the Liverpool game where rather than then trying to squeeze opponents Liverpool into their box, there was lots of instances of City just playing the ball backwards, even back to the goalkeeper at times, just to pull Liverpool forward, create that space, and then have these quick tempo shifts where they then shifted the direction of play, found these spaces in between the lines, and then were running at Liverpool's back line. And the second and fourth goal from that game both followed that sort of approach. So yeah, it's I suppose stuff that we've been talking about for a while on here. The fact that the tactical landscape has changed and how Guardiola fits within that landscape. It's something that I've been thinking about a lot because I've basically just written a book about it. So it's something that's been I was going to say the back of my mind for a while, but it's been at the front, very much at the front of my mind for a while as well. So kind of interesting to see how the season pans out because I basically end the book by asking the question, like, what's Guardiola going to look like in this new tactical paradigm? Is he going to be able to find his footing in this new world. And yeah, there's been a few games now. Obviously, the game against Arsenal in the Carabao Cup, 4-0 battering of Liverpool, albeit a Liverpool who are probably at their lowest ebb for a little while. That suggests that maybe this combination of players, the way they're playing, is going to be fit to cause other teams problems in this new age. So yeah, very interesting result for them at the weekend against Liverpool. But that's the question for me, I suppose, going forward here is this season City have looked good on occasions, right, throughout the season. They've had results where you're like, how's this team ever going to lose again? And then they've dropped points the next week against, a Fulham or someone like that. And I guess that's sort of where we're at now. At least for me, I want to know are City going to consistently win the next 7 games? Because in the past, that's what they would have done, right?
Yeah.
They just march to the end of the season, and then it's the question of whether or not the team that are in the title race can keep up with them.
The inverse of Arsenal's momentum, where they start slow and they gain speed later.
And that's partly because I think the players take a while to get used to, like there's a lot of new players that takes time for them to learn the system, but also because the players, they have to gel together and learn how to play together, and that momentum carries them through. But yeah, I'm still not convinced that City are going to win all 7 of their games, which I think makes the Arsenal title run a little bit easier, because I think even if City just lose a game in that run, then Arsenal can afford to lose 2, I think, which I just can't see happening unless they get into a spiral.
It's a classic limp over the line, isn't it?
Yeah, and that the Premier League in many respects is going back to the old ways, right? And do you remember the Conte Chelsea title?
I remember it well. Yeah.
That's a great example of a team like doing what Liverpool did last season, having a really good run of momentum at the beginning of the season, and then sort of, with Liverpool, they didn't even drag themselves over the line. It's just there was no line because no one was really chasing them. But in that season, they were 1-0ing their way through games against like West Broms and Stokes and teams like that.
You always love to bring that season up because the quality of the bottom half was so bad.
Oh, right? That season was remarkable. If you ever go back and look at the bottom half, it's most of them are now championship sides.
Between October 1st and New Year's Eve 2016, Chelsea won every single game.
Yeah.
So that's.
But I remember they really weren't convincing. They had Diego Costa was basically dragging them through. Is that right?
Hazard had a seed of his life.
13 games in a row. Diego, not Diogo.
Diego, sorry.
Isn't Diego Costa a goalkeeper?
Yeah, he's the goal.
So if he was scoring goals, that would be mighty impressive. It was Costa and Hazard.
Yeah,
and a solid base behind them.
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah, and the fact that they were up in the season off the back of there's an argument to be made that maybe that's where the landscape is going to plateau out at, that rather than there being a dominant approach that basically we saw with Guardiola, that it's going to be much more about momentum and keeping players fit for long enough and having referee decisions going your way, and just the rub of the green being a bit more impactful, which I think is interesting because the history that we've just told of this the imposition of control by Guardiola and then the gradual, I guess, erosion of that control to where we are now almost feels like we've gone through a cycle and we've ended up not in the exact same world as we were in before, but a world very similar to that.
Do you know what's going to happen? Everton are going to take points off City and it's going to keep them in the top half. And then Joe's really going to rub that in your face.
Yeah.
In which fixture would you most like to secure the league title?
This weekend, presumably.
Yeah, the Etihad would be lovely if that was mathematically possible.
Yeah.
I don't know. One at home. I always think it's nice to win a title at home.
Yeah.
You remember it well, of course, like all of the titles that Arsenal have won at home.
Yeah, all those Emirates Cups have been great, man. I don't know. I think the home game of the season, not because I've pulled over the
Burnley.
Burnley.
Crystal Palace the following weekend on the final day. Stop asking me for tickets in the home end. You can't have them.
Okay, well, there goes my plan to do that.
He will be topless though. He's promised you.
So if you want to see that,
Yeah, just celebrating the wrong goals. I'm not having it.
How do we feel about the title? You obviously don't want to feel anything about it, but how are you
I feel
feeling
like they're going to limp over the line. They're going to do just enough. They'll probably just. What's the current gap?
It's 9
points with the game in hand and
right,
to play each other. The game in hand, of course, against Palace. So
so City are going to win their game in hand. So it's 6 points plus head to head.
Yeah.
So City need Arsenal to lose.
Yeah.
Including the game against them. So
why
City need to beat Arsenal.
Yeah.
Arsenal lose another game and City don't lose at all.
Arsenal have a better goal difference as well as it stands.
That's just not going to happen, is it?
39-32.
Arsenal are going to win it by like 3 points.
They're going to win it on goal difference, aren't they?
God, I can't take that.
That would be
And
fantastic.
it'll come down to the last game of the season. It'll just be a straight shootout for the line.
That'd be possibly the worst thing that's ever happened.
that would
What's your favourite final day? Aguero?
Yeah, it's hard to beat that.
The City Liverpool, was it 2022 when City went 2-0 down to Villa? And
Yeah.
everyone at Anfield thought Liverpool had won the title, and then De Bruyne and Gundogan just turned it on.
Lasagna Gate was quite good. That wasn't for a title. It was for a much more important fourth place trophy. But Arsenal overtook Spurs on the final day of the season because of the Spurs team being kind of food poisoned. By
No one made anything.
was,
No one made anything of St Totteringham's Day this year.
No.
It
I
passed.
think it happened in February.
Passed years ago.
That was Lasagna Gate. Wasn't the lasagna a myth? I thought it was like
I think it
virus,
might be.
yeah.
I think I might have been done by AI again, like
It's
with
nuts,
the
though.
like with the blue moon.
I saw somebody, a former pro, recently saying that you should just play through illness. I can't remember who said it, but it's like, just get on with it. Just like have some paracetamol and go. But I think that Tottenham game from 2005,
2006 was the
Six.
final day at Highbury
that was it.
as well.
Thierry Henry hat-trick against Wigan.
Yes, indeed.
Why do I know that?
Do you remember that viral story about making a massive lasagna in Wembley? Was that during lockdown?
Yeah. It was to like provide because there was food shortage or something during lockdown.
Use
so they were
Wembley
turning
as an oven.
Yeah.
The beauty of that was that the voice note was so well acted. It was so convincing.
Yeah.
There was no giggling at all. It was just like, yeah, man, they're going to use helicopters to like drop lasagna into everybody's gardens. That's probably the end of the show, isn't it?
Probably.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kaya.
Thank you, Reuben.
Thank you, producer James.
Danke very much.
And thank you, audience, for consuming this content. I've stolen that from an old script.
Delivered by helicopter into everyone's back garden.
Back on Monday. Are you doing Ring for Analysis this week?
We've already recorded it.
It's the part
backed up.
2.
So it will be there.
Part 2 of the Brian Clough story.
Yeah.
I thoroughly enjoyed part 1. So
It was good fun recording that.
look out for that audio exclusive. And then on Monday, Joe will be back with producer Steve, I believe, from Belize. And Kaya and JJ and maybe somebody else. I don't know. I haven't seen the schedule. I'm not on that show. Anyway, until then, bye-bye.